I was lying on the couch, my laptop open but no longer useful, eyes locked on the text that had just appeared on my phone screen. Vic, just a heads up, so you're not surprised. The guest list for this weekend's party is final. There isn't enough space, so we had to cut a few people. Hope you understand. The message was from Noah, my younger brother who had just completed his 18-month military service. And me, the one who sent dozens of care packages all the way to his base in Germany, who stayed up through time zone differences just to talk to him when he was feeling down, was now cut from his welcome home party. I stared at the screen, waiting for another text. Something like, just kidding, you're a VIP. But nothing. Just a cold, matter-of-fact exclusion. No explanation. No guilt. It felt like something dropped to the bottom of my chest. A quiet impact. Not loud enough to scream, but heavy enough to make my chest feel like it was weighed down with stone. I had been there for him through all those months when our parents were too busy or too clueless to know how to talk to a son stationed in a strange land, filled with sleepless nights and grueling drills. I was the one who helped Mia, his fiancée, plan a surprise video call on his second birthday away from home. I designed the digital invitation for their engagement party, tweaking every detail because Mia wanted it to look professional. And now, I'd been crossed off like an extra guest. An outsider. Unable to swallow the sting of being shut out, I called Dad. He'd been excitedly talking about this party for weeks, the menu, the live music, even renting a huge projector for a highlight reel. The phone rang twice before he picked up. His voice was hoarse, familiar. "Hello, Vic. What's going on, sweetheart?" I didn't beat around the bush. Noah just texted me. "I'm not on the guest list." "You knew about this, didn't you?" There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh, the kind I knew all too well, the kind he used when he didn't want to deal with something. Vic, don't overreact. It's just a family get-together. Space is tight, you know that." I bit my lip. My voice stayed calm, but every word felt like it was slicing into me. Not enough space? I just saw Noah's Instagram post with over 80 names on the list. Distant relatives, elementary school friends, co-workers he's known for a few months. And me? I'm his sister. Dad cleared his throat, sounding awkward. Those people RSVP'd early. It's hard to take anyone off now. Don't take it personally, sweetheart. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. Don't take it personally? I was there when he was a nervous wreck in his first uniform. I stayed up all night talking him through rough training days. And now you're telling me not to overreact? Another sigh, like I was the one making a scene. Don't make this into a thing. It's just a party. One night. I didn't respond. I could only hear my heart pounding like it was warning me something was about to crack. I hung up, my hand trembling. My eyes stayed on the phone screen where Noah's "not enough space" message still sat unblinking. My fingers began scrolling through old photos and messages. His grateful texts when I sent homemade cookies. The heart emojis when I had his favorite takeout delivered. Those old messages saying, "Without you, I probably would have given up already," now felt like a distant dream. I set the phone down and stood up, my heart echoing with silent noise. I wasn't angry at Noah for crossing me off. I was angry because he didn't care. Because he didn't see anything wrong with it. And most of all, I was angry at myself for always being there, too ready, too trusting, too quick to forgive. I looked out the window. The sky was a dull gray, heavy like my chest. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for permission to exist anymore. I sat frozen on the couch, my hand wrapped around a coffee cup gone cold. Dad's words still echoed in my mind like a stuck recording. "It's just a gathering." Just a gathering? The way he said it sounded so light, like I was overreacting, like my disappointment wasn't worth acknowledging. But how could I not be hurt when my own family so easily deemed me unworthy of being there? I got up and walked into my small home office, where stacks of design drafts still covered the desk. I opened the drawer and pulled out a small USB stick. On it was the design file for the Welcome Home Noah poster, something I'd created for free without being asked. because I thought it was what family did. I remembered staying up until nearly 2 a.m. just to find the exact font Mia liked, something delicate, elegant, with soft curves. She sent me a heart emoji after I emailed the final draft. Noah never said thank you, but I didn't mind then. I thought, if it made him happy, if things went smoothly, that was enough. I remembered when he texted me at 2 p.m. during a training break. "Sis, my car broke down. I don't know what to do." I didn't ask questions. I just transferred $500 with a note. "Fix your car? Don't stress." The first time he left for basic training, Mom didn't know how to pack his bags, and Dad was tied up at the repair shop. I was the one who ran all over town to find the right military-grade backpack, printed his packing checklist, and woke up at 4 a.m. to drive him to the military station over an hour away. And now, I wasn't even invited to the day he came back. I turned on my computer and opened a photo folder labeled Noah's Journey. Everything from his awkward first uniform photo to screenshots of our video calls, his eyes shining even in some makeshift room somewhere in Europe. A while later, my phone buzzed. A message from Mia. "Vic, I know Noah texted you. Honestly, I was surprised you weren't invited too, but please don't take it personally. Noah just didn't want the party to get too crowded." I read her words as my heart turned colder by the second. Not because of what she said, but because of how they talked about me, like I was some burden to the atmosphere. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I shut my laptop and walked to the window. Night had fully fallen. The streetlights glowed as I watched silhouettes move along the quiet street in West Portland, the neighborhood I'd lived in for nearly 6 years. Over 1,000 miles from my parents' house, but I was always the one who came back when they needed something. When Dad had to replace the entire plumbing system, I paid the bill. When Mom needed someone to take her to her medical appointments, I booked the flights, rented the car, and arranged the schedule. I was always willing. But now, I started asking myself, how many times have I given without ever receiving? How many times have I sacrificed just because I thought I was supposed to? Because I was the good older sister? I didn't know how long I stood by the window before the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Dad. "Vic, please, don't overthink this. It's not worth getting upset about. Please understand, Noah. He just wants a peaceful evening, no tension." I let out a laugh, the first of the day, but it had no joy in it. No tension? So I'm the tension? I'm the one who ruins my own brother's peace just by being there? I walked over to the closet and pulled out my suitcase. The old pair of snow boots I bought last year but never got to use sat quietly in the corner. I opened my laptop and typed into the search bar, "Solo ski trip, Colorado." Images of cozy cabins, tucked into pine forests, snow-covered landscapes, and crackling fireplaces filled the screen. In that moment, I knew I wasn't going to wait for anyone to invite me. I would write my own plans. If they thought I wasn't important enough to be at that party, then I didn't need to sit here and endure being treated like an afterthought. I was no longer the older sister always behind the scenes, sacrificing in silence. Not this time. Not ever again. The next morning, I left my apartment earlier than usual. The sting of being left out still lingered, but instead of sitting at home stewing in anger, I grabbed my bag and headed out, stopping by the corner cafe I usually visited on weekends, Hazel's Brew. The morning air in Portland still carried the crisp chill of early spring. The cafe was warm, filled with the scent of cinnamon waffles and soft jazz music that helped ease my heart a little. I ordered my usual, an unsweetened almond milk latte and an apple tart, then picked a spot near the window, where the sunlight landed just right on the glossy wooden table. I was about to check the news on my phone when the voices of 2 people behind me grew louder than usual. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, really I wasn't, but when I heard my name, my heart froze. What's her last name again, Victoria? Didn't see her name on the guest list for Noah's welcome back party. That was Lila's voice. My cousin, who always had a way of speaking that sounded half accidental, half deliberate, so others would hear. Maybe she did something to upset Noah. I mean, who crosses their own sister off a guest list? I heard she used to be kind of controlling. I held my breath. The second voice was Jenna, another cousin who once messaged me to design a birthday invitation for her son, then forgot to say thank you. Maybe she stopped helping with money? I heard she used to wire him some cash when he was in a bind, but now? Radio silence. Yeah, can't really blame Noah. Who wants someone bringing drama to a party? It felt like someone had slapped me across the face. My ears burned, my throat tightened. I forced myself not to turn around, biting my lip hard and staring at my latte. Every word they said slicing through what little belief I had left in my family. I don't know how long they kept talking. I just know that when I stood up, my coffee was still full, but I felt completely empty. I walked out like a ghost, my hand gripping the strap of my bag so tightly it hurt. What they said wasn't just gossip. It was confirmation. In their eyes, I was the extra. I walked without direction, not realizing where I was going, until I found myself in front of the small bookstore at the end of the street. The one Noah and I used to visit the summer before his senior year, back when he was still that shy little brother who clung to me in crowds. I remembered that afternoon, how he picked a book about military history and looked at me with sparkling eyes. If I joined the army someday, would you support me? I hugged him and said, I'll always be behind you. And in all the years that followed, I kept that promise. What I didn't expect was that by the time Noah came back, my place had been replaced by careless whispers and suspicious looks from our own relatives. I pulled out my phone and reopened the texts from Dad, Mia, and Noah. All read, none replied. And I realized none of them thought leaving me off the guest list was wrong. They just thought I was being sensitive, making a fuss, being difficult. I didn't need an apology. I needed respect. And that, clearly, was something they had never truly given me. I returned home with a decision both clear and firm. I would not let myself be labeled as the difficult one ever again. If they thought I didn't deserve to be part of their celebration, then I didn't need to be the one fixing problems I was no longer a part of. I opened my laptop and returned to the travel booking page I'd searched the night before. My cursor hovered over destinations like Aspen, Jackson Hole, before stopping at a place I never thought I'd go. White Pine Lodge, Wyoming. A wooden cabin nestled among pine trees, beside a frozen lake with endless snow-covered slopes. No noise, no judgment, no demands. I clicked book. At that moment, I didn't know what was waiting for me in Wyoming. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the forgotten one. That night, I sat alone on the living room floor, soft yellow light spilling onto the warm wooden floor, my empty suitcase open beside me like a void waiting to be filled. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the ticking of the clock. I had just booked a ski trip to White Pine Lodge in Wyoming, a place I'd never been, never imagined would mark the beginning of my self-rescue. I didn't book economy class, not this time. I chose first class, and I didn't hesitate when I hit the payment button. If I'd spent years prioritizing everyone else's feelings, sweating over every little detail for parties that weren't even mine, then this time I would choose myself. Every single moment. The cabin I picked was a private one right by the frozen lake, with wide windows looking out at snow-covered mountains and a real wood-burning fireplace. It came with a full package. A private ski lesson, lift tickets, even a fine dining dinner at the resort restaurant. The total cost might make some people wince, but I didn't care. I was used to spending money on others. This time, I was investing in myself. Friday morning, I arrived at the airport early, wearing a thick, cream-colored coat and the beige knit hat I bought last year but never got to wear. Sitting in the first-class lounge, hands wrapped around a hot cup of tea, watching planes glide past the windows, I felt a lightness, as if I'd just cut the cord tying me to years of heavy expectations. The flight to Wyoming was smooth. The flight attendants treated me like I was truly VIP, and maybe, for the first time in my life, I felt like I deserved that. When the plane landed in Jackson Hole, the biting cold made me shiver, but it was a good kind of cold, a cold that snapped me into clarity. Like my body was shedding every last trace of careless words, heavy silences, and looks that no longer saw me. The driver who picked me up was a middle-aged man named Hank, with salt and pepper beard and a warm voice. "First time at White Pine?" he asked while fastening his seatbelt. "Yes. I heard it's peaceful and beautiful. Hoping it lives up to that." "Better than you'd expect," he smiled, squinting behind his sunglasses. "People come here to find themselves. Maybe that's what you're doing too?" I paused for a moment, then nodded gently. "Maybe I am." The road from the airport wound through snowy pine forests, wooden cabins scattered along the mountainside, like a holiday postcard. When we pulled up to the gate of White Pine Lodge, I couldn't breathe for a second. It was stunning. A main lodge built of wood and stone, snow-covered shingles on the roof, a soft plume of smoke curling from the chimney. It all looked like something out of a fairy tale. The receptionist, Tara, a woman about my age with a long braid and cheeks pink from the cold, greeted me with a warm smile. "You must be Victoria? Your cabin is ready. And here's a welcome glass of wine. We hope you have a wonderful stay." I took the glass of red wine, my hand trembling slightly from the cold. Or maybe from emotion? I wasn't sure. The cabin was tucked deep in the quietest part of the resort. When I stepped inside, the warmth from the fireplace made my cheeks flush. A bed with a fluffy down comforter, an armchair beside the fire, a small bookshelf with winter novels, and outside the window, a frozen lake glinting under the sunset. I set my suitcase down, sank into the thick wool rug, poured myself a glass of wine, and just sat, quietly. No phone notifications. No guilt-tripping messages. No one asking me to be the bigger person. Just me. And the kind of peace I'd dreamed about for so long. I opened my phone and posted a photo of the cabin with the caption, "Not on the list? Then make your own list." I scheduled it to go live 2 hours later, just when I knew the party back home would be starting, so they'd know I wasn't just missing. I chose to disappear with purpose and grace. That night, I sat by the fireplace with a book, occasionally looking up to watch the snow fall outside the window. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt I had made the right choice. I had just poured myself another glass of red wine when my phone buzzed for the third time in less than 5 minutes. The screen showed Mom with the familiar 3 dots, like she was typing something so long it needed serious thought. I didn't bother opening it. Instead, I tucked my feet up on the armchair, pulled the soft fleece blanket over my legs, and brought the wine to my lips. The aroma held a hint of berries and oak. Warm, elegant, completely opposite to the chaos waiting in my inbox, just as I'd predicted. The moment my cabin photo post went live, right on schedule, the reactions from my family exploded like wildfire. The simple caption, "Not on the list? Then make your own list," paired with the image of me sitting by the fire, glass in hand, snow glowing through the window. Didn't need a tag or explanation, but everyone got it. And just like that, the message storm began. "Mom, Vic, what are you doing? Don't let your emotions make you act like this. Everyone was hoping you'd be there. Dad, this is Noah's celebration, not the time for theatrics." "Noah, are you serious? Posting that kind of photo and letting everyone gossip? What do you want?" I let out a soft laugh. What do I want? I just want to be acknowledged. But clearly, that's still a luxury in my family. A few minutes later, another message popped up. From Mia, Noah's perfect fiancé, the one who had once thanked me profusely for helping plan their engagement party, and now sat silent as a statue while I was excluded from this welcome celebration. "Mia, Victoria, I don't want to see you hurt. But things will only get worse if you keep this up. You're putting Noah in a tough spot." I set my wine down on the wooden table, leaned back in my chair, and watched the flames dance in the fireplace. Putting Noah in a tough spot? What about me? Have I ever been considered in any of this? But it didn't stop there. The next morning, when I posted a photo of golden waffles drizzled with syrup beside a steaming cup of coffee with the caption, "Cold air, hot coffee, and no one controls my mood anymore," the first phone call came in. Not from Mom, not from Noah, but from Aunt Lydia, my mom's sister, the one who always stayed helpfully neutral. I didn't answer, but a voicemail followed immediately. "Victoria, I know you're upset, but you don't have to go so public with this. People will think you're turning against your family. Honestly, sweetie, come back, explain calmly, and let's all celebrate together. Don't escalate things over hurt feelings." I went still. No one asked why I was left off the guest list. No one wondered if I was okay. They were too busy worrying about the family's image. Too busy smoothing things over. Too busy keeping things nice. And me? Just a name crossed out, then blamed for not behaving appropriately. The more I thought about it, the colder I felt. Not because of the snow, but because of the blinding truth. I wasn't overreacting. They just weren't used to me standing up for myself. I set my phone down, opened the camera, and snapped a photo from the cabin window, the frozen lake reflecting the sunlight like crystal. I didn't write a caption, just posted it with a thumbs up and smile emoji. Almost instantly, a college friend commented, "Living your best life, Vic. I wish I had the guts to cut ties with people who don't deserve space in my life." A former coworker wrote, "I was once the shadow in my own family. You're inspiring." I read every word, every emoji, and felt something strange stir in my chest. I wasn't alone. While my own family tried to make me feel like the problem, complete strangers could see my worth. That night, as the fire in the hearth faded to embers, I reopened my phone and found another message from Noah. "Noah, if you had just come, none of this would have happened. I really don't understand why you had to turn this into some big lesson." I quietly typed a few words, then deleted them. Finally, I replied, "This lesson isn't for you. It's for me, and I won't forget it." I hit send. This time, I didn't feel torn. I didn't feel regret. I just felt peace. And I knew I had taken another step out of that old cycle called endure, to be accepted. I was sitting on the wooden floor by the cabin window, wrapped in a blanket and sipping hot cocoa when the phone rang again. It was Carla, my cousin on Mom's side, the only one in our extended family I still kept in touch with, because she was smart enough to stay out of the drama and kind enough never to hurt others for her own gain. I picked up, and before I could say anything, her voice burst through, a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Vic, oh my God, sit down. You will not believe what just happened." I took a sip of cocoa, smiling softly. "Let me guess. Someone spilled the cake, or Noah said something dumb in front of Grandma?" No, this is way beyond that." I raised an eyebrow, sensing chaos was about to unfold. Carla's voice dropped to a whisper, like she was hiding in a corner to call me. Mia walked out, in the middle of the party, right after throwing a mocktail all over Noah. I nearly spilled my drink. "What?" "Yeah, turns out Noah got caught flirting with Rachel Myers, his ex from high school, the one Mia swore was never allowed in shared spaces." I leaned on my knee, heart racing. Rachel Myers. That name alone used to set me off, even if it was just a harmless birthday comment on Facebook. And Noah? Never really knew how to set boundaries. Mia really left? Not just left, Vic. Before storming out, she told everyone, "I was stupid to think you were actually a grown-up." Then bam, mocktail all over his crisp white shirt. Everyone froze. I didn't know whether to laugh or sigh. And Noah? After Mia left, he lost it, punched the brick wall by the door. Guess what happened? Broken hand? Bingo, right wrist. Swollen like a grapefruit. They had to call an ambulance. Your mom was sobbing, saying everything's falling apart. Your dad ran around looking for help, but half the guests had already quietly left. I got up, walked to the kitchen, set down my cocoa, and leaned on the counter. The chaotic puzzle in my mind was coming together into something almost pitifully comedic. Carla wasn't done. Oh, and Uncle Pete, you remember? The one always bragging about whale watching in Alaska? He got so drunk he slipped and face-planted right into the punch bowl. I burst out laughing. No way. I swear. But the best part, Grandma, wanna guess what she said? I stayed quiet, sensing the punchline would land hard. Carla took a deep breath, then lowered her voice like she was sharing a golden secret. She looked Noah straight in the face, hand bandaged, shirt soaked in punch, and said, "You're paying the price for cutting out the one person in this family who truly loved you unconditionally. Don't expect forgiveness from the heavens when you erase your own blood." I froze. I had always thought Grandma sided with my parents, always choosing peace over justice. But today, she said that straight to Noah's face? Carla continued. She stood up, grabbed her cane, and walked out like a queen. No one said a word. Vic, you weren't there, but you were still the center of tonight. I walked back to the couch, holding the phone in both hands. I don't even know what to say. Carla giggled. You don't have to say anything. You didn't need to be there for them to realize how important you are. They wrecked it all by themselves. And this time, you're not the one paying the price. I looked out the window. Snow was still falling softly. The pine forest outside my cabin stood silent, untouched. Inside and out, it was all still and calm. And somehow, in the chaos of a party I wasn't invited to, I felt free. I had just stepped out of the hot tub on the cabin's porch, towel wrapped around my shoulders, still scented with herbal oil, when my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Noah. If you had been there, none of this would have happened. I stared at the words, my finger hovering between two impulses: delete it immediately or save it to remind myself that some things, once said, can't be unsaid. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat down on the wooden chair beside the outdoor fireplace, watching snow gather on the pine branches, feeling a strange mix of bitterness and quiet amusement. They had made me the family's shield for years, only to panic when I stopped standing there to absorb their fallout. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mom. Can you stop being childish? Noah is a wreck and your father and I are dealing with everything. Why is it that when the family needs you, you choose to disappear? I took a deep breath, trying not to let the anger boil over. I'd heard those lines my whole life. When we need you, you're not there. Why can't you be more like your brother and just take a step back? Family means sacrifice. But this time, I was different. I no longer wanted to carry the weight of roles they'd assigned to me without my consent. Then came a missed call from Dad. When I didn't pick up, he left a voicemail. Victoria, I don't understand why you're blowing everything up over not being invited to a party. Your mother's been crying all night, and Noah's in pain, physically and emotionally. You're an adult. You should know this is when you need to come back. I pressed my lips together, eyes focused on the screen that lit up with another new message. This time from Mia. Vic, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'm honestly freaking out. I don't know what to say to Noah, to his parents, to our friends. Everyone's looking at me like I ruined everything. If you could just talk to Noah, even for a moment, maybe he'd calm down. A shiver ran down my spine. They were blaming me. Not one person asked why I wasn't at the party. Not one of them considered that maybe I stayed away because I was tired. Tired of being the one to fix what no one else ever tried to keep whole. I opened my notes app and typed a single line. Not being there to clean up the mess doesn't mean I caused it. Then I got up, walked into the cabin, poured myself a cup of peppermint tea, and opened the window. The cold air swept in, carrying the scent of pine and melting snow. I knew this for certain. If I went back, I'd end up cleaning up the pieces again. The one they never saw as important. Until everything fell apart. And the most ridiculous part was, I didn't do anything. Noah flirted with his ex. Mia walked out. My parents lost control. and me. I simply wasn't there, and yet somehow became the center of the fallout in their eyes. I picked up my phone and scrolled through all the messages, pausing on Mom's, "Can you stop being childish?" I pressed and held, selected forward, sent it to myself, and titled the conversation, "Why I'm Not Going Back." Then I went into settings and muted the family group chat. I needed silence. Not to forget, but to remember exactly why I walked away. As night fell, the firelight danced across the wooden walls again. I opened the book I brought, a novel about healing, and read slowly, page by page. No messages, no guilt-tripping voices, just the wind brushing the cabin roof and words whispering of freedom. And I knew, no matter how hard they tried to pull me back, I wasn't in that old place anymore. I had stepped out of my old role, the silent endurer, the peacemaker, the one who was never allowed to be angry, hurt, or say enough. I woke up to sunlight peeking through the wooden blinds, casting a soft golden glow across the ash-gray blanket. The wind whispered outside the window, mingled with the sound of snow falling on the roof, and my heart felt calm. My phone sat quietly on the nightstand, just a lifeless metal block I'd switched to airplane mode the night before, after reading Mia's final message and silently blocking them all. Noah, Mom, Dad, and every relative who thought they had the right to judge. I didn't feel guilty. On the contrary, for the first time in years, I felt at peace. After a simple breakfast of toast and strong coffee, I suited up for skiing and stepped outside. The view unfolded like a painting, towering pines draped in snow, sunlight streaking down the white slopes, and in the distance, a group of people laughing as they strapped on skis. That morning's lesson was led by Sam, a blonde instructor with a bright smile and pale blue eyes that held something understanding. He gently adjusted my stance, encouraged me every time I stumbled or wobbled in the snow. "Don't fight the slope, Victoria, just relax, trust your body. It knows the way." I laughed after my third fall, snow clinging to the back of my jacket. "That sounds like a life lesson." "Maybe it is," Sam winked. "I've met a lot of people who came here to escape something, but once they dared to glide down that first hill, they realized what they really needed was freedom." I looked at him, feeling something catch in my chest. He probably had no idea how close to home that landed. In the afternoon, I joined a snowshoeing tour around the frozen lake. The guide, Linda, was a warm, witty woman in her 50s. Beside me walked a couple from Seattle. Mark and Jamie, probably in their 40s, spending their annual winter break at White Pine Lodge. "First time traveling alone?" Jamie asked as we paused by an old pine tree. I nodded, a bit shy. "Yeah, and first time not carrying other people's expectations." Mark chuckled, pointing to the circle of footprints in the snow. "Then you're headed the right way. Some trips aren't about going toward someone, they're about getting away." That evening, I stopped by the bar at the lodge. Soft, amber lighting, acoustic guitar under a wooden roof, and people huddled close to the fire, sipping drinks and swapping stories. Sam saw me and waved me over to a table where a few guests had gathered. I sat down, ordered a glass of red wine, and minutes later was laughing out loud at a Canadian guy telling the story of his epic wipeout on last year's slope. No one asked where I was from. No one pried into why I was alone. And I realized, sometimes, the best thing a stranger can do for you is not try to unpack your past. That night, I returned to the cabin with cheeks flushed from the wine and the cold, but my heart was warm. I took off my coat, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat by the fireplace. The flames danced, the wood crackled, and I pulled out the journal I brought from home. Flipping to the first empty page, I wrote my first sentence in months. Freedom isn't running away. It's refusing to return to places that hurt you. I closed the notebook, placed it on the table, and for the first time on this trip, I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with a flood of missed notifications, but I scrolled past them all without opening a single one. Instead, I opened my settings and kept the block list intact. So I didn't want another excuse. I didn't need another explanation for why I was excluded. I had chosen myself, and that choice had never felt clearer. I picked up my phone, opened the camera, and snapped a photo through the cabin window. The moonlight reflecting on the frozen lake, tree shadows stretching across the snow. I wrote the caption, "I didn't disappear. I just started living where I belong." No tags, no expectations. Just me, finally being me. I sat on the cabin balcony, a wool robe wrapped around me, feet resting on a stool lightly dusted with melted snow, hands curled around a steaming cup of coffee. The sun was rising, painting the distant mountains in gold, casting a gentle shimmer through the pine branches like a soft blanket. No more message notifications, no more missed calls. Only the wind rustling through the trees and my heartbeat, steady and quiet in my chest, like a rhythm of life I'd forgotten I still had. That morning, as I walked down to the front desk to ask about the shuttle back to the airport, I froze mid-step. I looked at the calendar hanging behind the counter, eyes landing on the red-circled Sunday, my planned departure date. I looked up and asked Tara, the receptionist, with a smile warm as hot cocoa, if I wanted to stay one more week, is the cabin still available? Tara didn't look surprised. She tilted her head and tapped a few keys. Lucky for you, it hasn't been booked yet. Want me to hold it for you? I nodded without hesitation. I wasn't afraid of going back. I just couldn't see a single reason to leave a place where I finally felt like myself. That afternoon, while sipping wine at the resort bar, I got a message from Carla, the one cousin I still spoke to after everything. Your mom's organizing a family meeting next week, apparently to clear the air. Just a heads up, you're on the guest of honor list. I leaned back in my chair, watching the golden light sparkle through my wineglass. A slow smile crept across my face. Not from anger, but from knowing the game all too well. An intervention masked as concern, but really just a performance. A collective defense in which I'd be pushed back into the role of the one who needs to understand. I typed a short reply and sent it to Carla. I'm too busy enjoying myself. Good luck with your mess. No exclamation mark. No fake warmth. Just a goodbye I wouldn't be taking back. Then I turned off the screen, flipped the phone face down on the table, and didn't touch it for the rest of the day. The next few days passed like a frozen stream in the woods, quiet and refreshing. I spent mornings skiing with Sam, afternoons walking the lake trails with familiar guests, and evenings back at the wooden table in the bar, listening to Mark's stories about getting lost on mountain hikes in Colorado. No one mentioned family. No one asked what I was running from. We were just people, living in the now with no need to explain the past. One weekend morning, sitting in the cabin reading, I realized days had gone by without me feeling like I had to be anywhere. I no longer felt guilty for not fixing everything. No longer felt heavy for not being on someone's list. I had once tried to fill every role. The dutiful daughter, the selfless sister, the woman who never let anyone down. But I'd learned this. Living for how others see you will always make you a blurry version of yourself. Now, I was just Victoria, the woman sipping coffee on a mountain, feeling the wind in her hair and the sunlight hitting a heart that had finally stopped breaking. I set the book aside, lifted my coffee, and stepped onto the balcony. The mountains stood still, solid, as if they too had known silent sorrow. I took a deep breath, listening to the sound inside my own chest. Calm, grounded. I didn't know what would come after this trip, but I knew one thing for sure. I had found myself in the last place anyone thought I would. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone erase my name from my own story. Again. From that trip, I learned one thing. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to stay and fight, it's to walk away and finally free yourself. I used to think I had to be there, to keep my family from falling apart. Turns out, my leaving is what made them look in the mirror. In that cold, quiet place, I found the voice that had been buried for too long. And now, I don't beg to be acknowledged. I define my worth in the power of my absence. What do you think about Victoria's decision? Should she go back or keep following her own path? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful family stories. The fluorescent office lights flickered overhead like they were mocking me. I gripped the sides of the podium tighter, the numbers on the slide blurring, blending into a nightmare with no exit. I could hear my own voice trembling across the room, filled with eager faces. As you can see in the third quarter financial report, the words sounded hollow in the dizziness. Everything spun, the charts turning into distorted streaks of color. I felt my heart no longer beating in rhythm. It was as if it wanted to tear through my chest and escape. I'm Nora Gibson, Chief Financial Officer of a major real estate corporation in New York, 36 years old, and I was dying in the middle of the highest point of my career. A voice called from the back of the room. "Nora, are you okay?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no sound came out. The room suddenly tilted to the left. It felt like I was floating in space before everything went dark. Chaotic voices erupted. "Call 911. She's not breathing. Clear the room." My assistant, Mary's terrified face appeared above me, her mascara running down her cheeks in 2 black streaks. "Nora, stay with us. The ambulance is coming." I tried to lift my hand, but my body felt like stone. I whispered, barely a moan. "Call my parents, please." Everything went black. When I opened my eyes, there was only one sensation left in my body: freezing cold. Urgent medical voices surrounded me. Unfamiliar medical terms like cardiac arrest and emergency surgery sliced into my ears like sharp knives. I clung to the wrist of a nurse, my vision as dim as a curtain not fully drawn. "My phone, I need to call my family." She hesitated for a moment, then placed the cold phone in my hand. I dialed my mother, straight to voicemail. I tried my father. Nothing. The messages I sent became a frantic blur, shaky, desperate words. "Mom, I'm at the hospital. They're prepping for surgery." "Dad, please, pick up. I'm so scared." Finally, the nurse gently took the phone from my hand. "We need to go now, Ms. Gibson. I'm sure they'll be here when you wake up." But they didn't come. I woke up after surgery, lying silently in the ICU. The steady beeping from the heart monitor played a dull, lonely tune. Mary had left a note on my bedside table saying she'd return in the morning, but the hospital only allowed immediate family after visiting hours. Family? What a joke. At 3 a.m., the night nurse softly adjusted my IV. "Your mother left a voicemail," she said gently. "Would you like to hear it?" I nodded, a faint hope flickering in my aching chest. My mother's voice came through, as cold as ice. "Nora, we got your messages, but your dad and I can't come right now. Emily's having a meltdown over the color they painted her new apartment. You know how sensitive she is. If she feels better tomorrow, we'll stop by. Love you." I turned away, tears sliding down my face. The nurse looked at me with pity. "Would you like me to call someone else for you?" I wiped my tears with the back of my hand. My mind flashed back to last Christmas when I'd quietly paid off Emily's $55,000 credit card debt. My mother hadn't even looked up from Emily's new handbag. "Thanks, Nora. You're such a good daughter." "Good? Good enough to be left alone in this cold hospital?" I inhaled deeply. "Could you hand me my phone, please? I need to call my lawyer." The nurse looked surprised but handed me the phone. My fingers no longer trembled as I dialed. "Lucas, it's me. Come here now. Bring all the documents I asked you to prepare. I'm in the ICU. And no, my family isn't here. That's exactly why I'm calling." I stared at the ceiling. The heart monitor beeped slowly, but now its rhythm was unfamiliar. Resolute. I thought I was used to my family's coldness, but that night, in the empty ICU, I realized I was wrong. I had never gotten used to it. I had only tried to. My phone buzzed at 4 a.m., a voicemail from my mother. I hesitated for a few seconds, then pressed play, clinging to a foolish shred of hope. "Nora, it's Mom. I just talked to Emily. She's really upset. The mint green paint in the living room made her cry all night. You know how sensitive she is. I know you're not feeling great, but our family is going through a tough time. We'll try to stop by tomorrow if things settle down. Rest well. Love you. I froze. It wasn't the voice of a mother worried about her daughter who had just undergone heart surgery. It was a tone filled with pity. For Emily, my 24-year-old little sister, who was distraught over a paint color. I let out a dry, hollow laugh, sounding like something inside me finally cracked. Mary returned in the early morning, quietly placing a coffee cup on my bedside table without saying much. Maybe she knew there were no words that could patch the emptiness inside me right now. "You have another message from your mother," Mary whispered. I didn't bother reading it. I knew it would just be the same shallow words. The hospital now felt like a cheap theater after a bad play, only me and the soulless machines remaining. I remembered last Christmas, writing a $60,000 check to clear Emily's debt. My mother hadn't even looked up from Emily's leather-bound photo album. Everyone just told me, "Nora, you really are the good daughter." I wasn't the good daughter anymore. Beside my hospital bed, I asked Mary to call Lucas again. "Bring all the paperwork, I need you immediately." The words came out like a breath, not a single hesitation. I had spent 36 years carrying the family's burdens. Enough. When Lucas arrived, his dark suit clashing with the sterile white lights, I barely glanced at him. "You know what to do, don't you?" "I know," he replied, his voice lower than usual. "But are you sure?" I glanced at the heart monitor, the rhythm steady as if nothing had happened. I've been sure since the moment my mother left me here for a botched paint job. Lucas said nothing more. He simply opened his briefcase, arranging stacks of papers neatly on the table beside my hospital bed. Wills, bank documents, the deed to the Florida mansion, the place my family spent every summer like some ritual to flaunt their status to their wealthy friends. I glanced over each page, signing my name without the slightest tremor. Every stroke of the pen felt like cutting through invisible chains that had bound me my entire life. Lucas nodded after gathering the files. "The house will be listed for sale today. All accounts tied to your family have been frozen. They'll receive the notifications by the end of the day." My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. Emily picked the paint color, dark olive. "Crisis over. How are you feeling, Nora?" I handed the phone to Lucas. "Take a look." He read it, letting out a long sigh. "Unbelievable." I smirked. Watch what I do next. I opened the family group chat. The messages were still flooded with photos of Emily posing in front of her freshly painted wall, along with a painfully long caption about her struggle to find her personal identity through the color of her living room. My fingers flew across the screen. "Still in ICU after emergency heart surgery. Thanks for asking. Super glad olive won over mint. Totally worth missing your daughter's near-death experience." Lucas looked at me, a mix of admiration and worry in his eyes. "You know how they're going to react, right?" I placed the phone face down. Let them react. They've lived in their bubble long enough. Time to pop it. The phone lit up non-stop after that. Messages from my mother, my father, Emily, all exactly as I predicted. "Nora, don't make a scene. The doctor said you're stable now." "Seriously? Why am I getting dragged into this?" I leaned back into the pillow, staring at the blinding white ceiling. "Keep going, Lucas. We're not done yet." Lucas didn't need much time to complete everything I requested. He was the only person I trusted enough to untangle the knots my family had tied around my neck for 36 years. When the faint morning light seeped through the ICU window, he laid the documents in front of me, each page marked with neon stickers. I looked at him, strangely calm. "Where do we start?" My voice was hoarse after a sleepless night. Lucas pulled up a chair beside the bed. "We start with the will. I've drafted a new one. Just needs your signature." I nodded. Each stroke of the pen severed the old veins I had forced myself to keep tied to that family. I crossed out my parents from the list of heirs. Not a hint of hesitation. "Next are the accounts you've been using to support Emily financially. I've listed every monthly expense here. They'll be shut down once you sign." I looked at the numbers, tuition payments, car purchases, credit card bills, even the rent for Emily's latest apartment, all quietly paid by me in exchange for hollow messages like, "Thanks, sis." I signed without flinching. Shut it all down. Lucas studied me carefully. "Are you sure? This is going to hit them hard." "Let it hit them," I replied flatly. "I've spent my whole life afraid of disappointing them. Now, it's their turn to know what it feels like to be left behind." I turned to the window. The city skyline was painted in soft orange hues of dawn. New York never sleeps, but I wasn't asleep anymore. Not in the way I used to be. Lucas flipped through the files. "Lastly, the Naples villa. Your family's using it this summer. Want me to list it now?" I gave a faint smile. "What do you think?" "Of course now. They've always assumed it was the family's. Time they learned the difference between ownership and illusion." Lucas nodded, his eyes reflecting an unusual sense of empathy. He knew me too well. He had seen me endure, carry the weight, retreat every time I got hurt. What he saw now wasn't the same woman he once knew. My phone buzzed nonstop. My family had surely read my group chat message from last night. I didn't bother to check. I no longer needed to hear their empty excuses or meaningless blame. Lucas stood, gathering the documents. "I'll send the official notice to them by the end of the day. Do you want to include a personal message?" I stayed silent for a moment, then shook my head. "No need. The documents will speak for themselves." Lucas packed up his files, glancing over at me, his eyes softening. "Nora, do you realize you're finally doing the one thing you've avoided your whole life?" I opened my eyes and looked straight at him. "You're wrong. I didn't avoid it, I just wasn't ready. Now I am." Lucas gave a sad smile I understood all too well. "All right, I'll do my part. But, Nora, brace yourself for the storm." I didn't respond. I was ready for the storm. This time, I would be standing at its eye, no longer swept away. After Lucas left, I allowed myself to lie back on the bed, listening to the clear, steady sound of my own heartbeat in my chest. Excuse for anyone. Not to hold anyone up. Simply, for me. 3 days after surgery, they finally showed up. My mother entered the hospital room as if she were walking into an upscale brunch in Manhattan. A Hermes scarf wrapped around her neck, holding a lavish bouquet of white flowers, her makeup so perfectly done it dulled the cold ICU lights. My father trailed behind her, his face twisted in discomfort like he was being dragged into a dull business meeting. My mother rushed in, eyes scanning the room, scrunching her nose. "Oh, Nora, the lighting here is just terrible for your skin." I let out a dry laugh. "Almost dying tends to have that effect, Mother." My father cleared his throat. "Come now, princess, let's not talk like that. We're here now, aren't we?" 3 days later, I corrected. 3 days. But who's counting, right? My mother pretended to arrange the flowers, trying to act casual. Emily really wanted to come, but she's still dealing with the contractor. The kitchen ceiling was done wrong. She cried all morning. I pressed the morphine button, not for the pain, but for patience. "So, where is Emily?" My father glanced around, like she might pop out from behind the curtain. "I'd guess she's posting an Instagram story about the ceiling," I replied. My mother froze for a split second, but quickly regained her fake composure. "Nora, you know how sensitive Emily is. She's been beside herself worrying about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Funny, I haven't seen that in her messages or voicemails. But I did see lots of ceiling pics, paint colors, and her self-discovery journey through crown molding." Aaron turned to face him. My father coughed lightly, avoiding my gaze. "Princess, maybe you're overreacting a little." I couldn't hold back the cold laugh. Overreacting? I almost died. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but the door swung open. Lucas walked in, his dark gray suit cutting through the stark white room like a sharp blade. He carried a thick folder, his face expressionless. My mother immediately plastered on her fake smile. "Lucas, darling! So lovely to see you. Are you here to check on Nora? She needs friends like you around." Lucas returned a polite smile. "No, Mrs. Gibson. I'm here today as her attorney." My mother's face visibly paled. My father leaned forward, his smile faltering. "Attorney? Nora, what is this?" I calmly opened the folder Lucas handed me. "The documents I signed 3 days ago, including my new will, removal of both your names from the list of heirs, the freezing of all accounts linked to Emily, and the paperwork to sell the Naples villa." I paused just long enough to see my mother's face freeze like wax. My father stared blankly. "The house. But this summer, we made plans. Not my concern anymore." I cut him off, my voice as flat as a frozen lake. My mother clutched her chest, eyes wide. "Nora, you can't be serious." I placed the pen on the table, looking directly at her. "You think I'm joking? When my heart stopped beating and not one of you cared?" The door burst open. Emily stormed in, still in her crisp white linen dress, oversized sunglasses, clutching a latte. "Nora, I just saw your message. How could you do this? I'm in the middle of a crisis, you know that. You always make everything about yourself." I leaned back, watching my sister like I was observing a ridiculous play. "Your crisis is crown molding, Emily. My crisis was cardiac arrest. I'm pretty sure we're not operating on the same level here." Emily screamed, her voice a shrill needle stabbing straight into my brain. "You're so selfish. You're stressing everyone out." Lucas calmly stood, pulling more documents from his briefcase. "Miss Gibson, I've also prepared a restraining order, just in case." My mother shouted, "Nora, stop this. You'll regret it." I tilted my head slightly, my smile unhurried. No need to raise my voice. "No, Mother. The ones who'll regret this won't be me." The room fell into silence. Only the steady beep of the monitor remained, as solid and unwavering as I was in that moment. After all these years, it finally beat only for me. I thought I was numb to my family's shocks by now. Turns out, I had underestimated them. 4 days after signing all the paperwork, I received an anonymous email. The subject line was simply 3 words: "Dad's medical records." I opened it with instinctive caution, but as the first line appeared, I felt like I was being pulled into an icy whirlpool. "Robert Gibson, diagnosed with hereditary cardiac arrhythmia in 1986. Ongoing monitoring for biological daughter Emily Gibson. No records of monitoring for Nora Gibson." I sat frozen. The shock seeped into every bone in my body. I had never known my father had a hereditary heart condition, and they had never once mentioned that I, the daughter they always called the caretaker's sister, might also carry that gene. And the name, Emily Gibson. They had been monitoring my sister's heart health since she was a child. But not me. My phone slipped from my hand, falling onto the hospital bed sheets. They knew. They had known all along. They chose to protect Emily. They chose to leave me in the dark. Lucas answered on the first ring. "Lucas, I just received something. You need to verify immediately." I forwarded him the email. A thick, heavy silence stretched across the line before Lucas finally swore under his breath. The first time I had ever heard him do that. "Damn it, Nora. This is deliberate medical concealment. I'll have my team go through all the records, but from what I'm seeing, they've known about this risk since you were a child." I leaned my head against the cold mattress, staring at the stark white ceiling, but inside me there was only pitch-black emptiness. "Lucas, I want the world to know. All of it. This isn't just about money, or me being used like a living ATM. They let me live my whole life as a ticking time bomb without so much as a warning." Lucas exhaled. "I get it. But this is going to be huge, Nora. Are you ready for that?" I pressed my lips together, my voice firm. They chose to protect Emily. Now it's my turn to protect myself. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I dug up old photos, faded medical records I'd been forced to forget. The puzzle pieces started falling into place in the most terrifying way. Why was I always the kid who had to walk to the clinic alone when I had a high fever, while Emily got an ambulance for a stomachache? Why was Emily always prioritized in health checkups, while I was handed off to the family doctor with a dismissive, "Nora's healthy, no need to worry"? And why, every time I asked about family medical history, did they just smile and change the subject? I knew why, now, as I wasn't their biological child. Lucas's call the next morning confirmed everything. "I have the documents, Nora. You're the daughter of Sarah Gibson, Margaret's sister. You were legally adopted when you were 2, after Sarah died in a car accident." It felt like my entire past was being stripped bare. I wasn't their child. I was the daughter of a dead woman, and they had kept me out of obligation. Or more accurately, as a backup plan. They knew. They knew the heart condition wasn't hereditary for me, but they never bothered to tell me because I wasn't important enough to know. Lucas stayed silent for a moment before speaking. "We'll use this. We'll make the medical records public, expose their cover-up. And Nora, I need you to understand, once you do this, there's no going back." I closed my eyes, taking a long breath. Lucas, I never had anything to go back to. That day, I drafted an email to all my company staff, friends, and even old business partners who knew my family. No names, no direct accusations. Just the story of a girl who grew up in a family filled with secrets and lies. A girl who almost died because of information that was deliberately kept from her. When I hit send, a wave of coldness and relief washed over me. No more burdens. No more guilt. Just the raw, ugly truth that needed to be told. And I knew the real battle had only just begun. I always thought of myself as a private person. I didn't like noise, never needed anyone to know my pain. But this time, I understood. Silence only fed people like my family. And I was done living in the gilded cage they had built. I opened my laptop, my fingers gliding across the keyboard with resolve. I wasn't writing as a betrayed daughter. I was writing as someone who had survived a lifetime of manipulation. I didn't name them. Just the story of a girl who paid every bill for parties she was never invited to. A girl raised to be quiet, to sacrifice, to stand in the shadows while others basked in the spotlight. Until the day she almost died and realized she wasn't even part of that family. Overnight, the post spread like wildfire. The comments flooded in, thousands, then hundreds of thousands of people sharing the story. Strangers messaged me about toxic families, decades of silence, invisible scars they carried. The media got involved. I didn't need to name names. They connected the dots themselves. They knew. The New York business community knew. Social media groups knew. The Gibson family was stripped bare in front of the high society they once ruled. Emily panicked. She posted stories denying everything, claiming I was lying, that I was jealous of her success, but her desperate attempts only made her a laughingstock online. Lucas sent me an audio recording he'd received from an anonymous source. In it, Emily was screaming at my parents, demanding they do something. "You're just going to let her do this? You have to stop her. People are looking at me like I'm the villain. Do something." My mother hissed in the recording. "We're trying, Emily. But Nora's always been the ungrateful one. She's gone too far this time." My father only let out a weak sigh, as if everything that was happening was just an unwanted inconvenience. I listened to the recording in silence. No more anger. Just a bitter relief. The evidence they had tried to hide their whole lives was now exposing them all on its own. A few days later, I received a formal complaint from Emily's lawyer. She accused me of defamation, damaging her reputation and causing her severe emotional distress. Lucas merely scoffed when he glanced at the papers. "They're really desperate now." I nodded. "You know what to do." Lucas struck back by filing a countersuit, attaching all the evidence of financial fraud Emily had committed under my name. Unauthorized loans, bank accounts she had secretly accessed, lavish expenses I had been forced to pay. When the court dismissed Emily's lawsuit, Lucas said bluntly, with no more politeness, "They dug their own grave, Nora. Now we just need to give them a little push." That same day, a video of Emily screaming and throwing a cocktail at a journalist during a charity gala in Manhattan went viral. Her smudged makeup running down her cheeks became a meme across countless forums. I got a message from Nicholas, Emily's ex-boyfriend. "She's completely losing it. If you want, I'm willing to testify about everything I know." I replied with just one simple sentence. "Thanks, but..." She'd write her own downfall. I wouldn't lift a finger. I shut down my laptop, quietly watching the sky outside. The gray clouds rolled over the city, but inside me, the storm had passed. What I needed to do, I had done. Now I just wanted peace, to enjoy my own heartbeat, its rhythm, no longer theirs, only mine. I left New York on an autumn morning as the leaves began to change colors along Fifth Avenue. I didn't look back. Everything that belonged to me was packed neatly into 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket to California. San Diego welcomed me with golden sunshine and the salty ocean breeze. This city had no idea who I was, and I didn't need anyone to know. I just needed a space wide enough to breathe, without the suffocating weight in my chest that had followed me for so many years. My new apartment was much smaller than the Upper East Side penthouse I used to rent for my parents, under the excuse of maintaining the family image. But here, everything was mine. From the simple couch to the window overlooking the sea. I hired a professional estate auction company to liquidate everything that remained of the Gibson family's assets. I kept nothing except for an old photo of Aunt Sarah that Lucas had found in the archives. In the picture, she held me, a 2-year-old girl, with a tenderness I had never received from the people I called Mom and Dad. The auction went quickly. The Naples villa sold for well above the asking price. I didn't bother reading the whining texts from my mother or the meaningless threats in Emily's emails. I blocked all their contact. I had spent my whole life enduring those voices. Not anymore. Lucas advised me to keep a portion of the money for safety, but I had other plans. I used most of the funds to establish the Sarah Gibson Foundation, a charity supporting underprivileged families in screening and treating hereditary heart conditions. I wanted the foundation to be my real legacy, not cold bank accounts, not glittering villas, but something warm, meaningful, carrying the imprint of the woman who gave me life. At the foundation's opening ceremony, I wore a simple black dress, standing before a small hall, speaking to strangers. People I felt closer to than anyone who had ever called me daughter or sister. I told my story. No embellishments, no forced strength, just the truth. About a child raised in a house full of fake parties, where silence was painted as duty and sacrifice worn like a toxic badge of honor. I spoke about the importance of early heart health screening, about how neglect and lies could kill a person, not with a knife, but with indifference. When I finished, I saw tears streaming down the faces of people I had never met, but this time I didn't feel obligated to comfort them. I just felt light, as if I had finally placed a period at the end of my story. Lucas approached me after the event, handing me a letter. "From them," he said softly. I looked at the pristine white envelope, my mother's neat handwriting clear on the front. I didn't open it. I tore it up and dropped it in the trash without a hint of hesitation. That night, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, the ocean breeze running through my hair, and for the first time, I felt an unfamiliar peace. My phone buzzed. It was Nicholas. He sent me a photo. Emily being kicked out of a luxury boutique after yelling at the staff for refusing her return. I laughed, no bitterness left. She's finally learning what not being accepted feels like. I didn't reply to Nicholas anymore. My story with them was over. Now, I had other stories to write, other people to meet, other heartbeats to protect. I didn't plan it, but somehow, everything seemed to fall into place at just the right time. After the launch of the Sarah Gibson Foundation, I received hundreds of emails. Not just hollow congratulations. More than that, there were long, tearful letters from people I had never met. They told me about their families, the invisible walls, the quiet wounds, the names they kept buried like shameful secrets. I read every word. Each story was like a mirror reflecting me in those past years. I realized I wasn't as alone as I had thought. The idea to start a support group for survivors of toxic families came to me one drizzly night, while I was typing a reply to a middle-aged woman in Ohio, someone who had spent 30 years under her mother's subtle control. I hosted a trial chat on Zoom. I gave it a simple title, No Longer Alone. At first, only a handful of people showed up, but the next week it grew to 20, then 50. They came from everywhere. Teachers, lawyers, nurses, retail workers, students, all with one thing in common. They had been suffocated by their own families, forced to sacrifice themselves to keep up the perfect family facade. The first session ended in silence. No one wanted to leave the virtual room. We just sat there, looking at each other, breathing. I finally understood what it meant to be quiet, and not afraid. I officially founded the support group and named it Reclaim. We met regularly once a month, initially online, then slowly moving into small in-person gatherings in San Diego. There was no curriculum, no preaching. We just shared, just listened. And that alone started to heal old wounds. I met women brave enough to sue their parents for financial abuse, single fathers who admitted to being manipulated by their ex-wives for over a decade, young women who finally said no to parents who used the excuse of family to control them. Each story was a small flame. Together, we became a wildfire. The media began writing about our group. They called us the silent wave breaking the silence. I didn't care about the labels. What mattered to me was that every day, more people escaped the invisible prisons they used to call home. Lucas attended one of our meetings, standing quietly in the corner as an observer. After the session, he walked over to me, his eyes soft as the breeze. "Nora, I've never seen you shine like this." I looked at him, tilting my head with a smile. Maybe because this life is finally mine. That night, I wrote a new blog post, but it wasn't to expose anyone, not to unveil any more truths. I wrote it for those still sitting in the dark, too scared to step out. Family isn't a place where you have to shrink yourself, swallow your tears, or wonder if you're enough. Family is where you get to breathe. And if your blood family doesn't let you breathe, you have the right to leave. I hit publish and turned off my phone, not waiting for feedback, not afraid anymore. Outside, the city lights of San Diego shimmered like living veins. I stepped onto the balcony, letting the wind toss my short hair. I had chopped off the long hair my mother always forced me to keep for the sake of femininity. I had also deleted every contact that had ever made me feel small in this world. And that was enough. I didn't look for news about them anymore. But the news still found me. 3 weeks after Reclaim was praised by the media as a quiet awakening wave, an old colleague sent me an article. A photo of Hazel, standing in the middle of a shopping mall, hair disheveled, clutching a suitcase, being escorted out by security. She screamed at the paparazzi. "You don't understand. I'm Hazel Gibson. My family is..." Her sentence was cut off by camera flashes and mocking laughter. I didn't feel pity, not even anger. I just sat still, watching the image as if I was looking at a stranger in a cheap movie. Hazel used to have it all. Brand ambassador contracts, red carpet events, live streams with tens of thousands of viewers. But now, she was left with the ruins she'd built herself. I heard from Lucas that Emily tried to sue me again, this time accusing me of causing severe emotional distress, and disrupting her career opportunities. But the court didn't even bother to hear the case. It was dismissed within 3 days, accompanied by the judge's remark that it was a desperate, baseless attempt. Lucas sent me the court recording. In it, Hazel was screaming, her voice cracking. "He ruined my life. People are calling me a fraud, a parasite. You have to help me." But no one helped Hazel. No one was left. The Gibson family collapsed faster than I expected. My father was forced to resign from the board of directors of 2 real estate companies where he had once sat as an honorary member. My mother was removed from the organizing committee of prestigious charity events in New York after the stories I shared on my blog were cross-checked, with internal documents provided by her former friends. All the masks they had carefully built over 3 decades shattered in less than 3 months. Friends distanced themselves. The press dug deep into financial secrets, shady relationships I never thought I needed to uncover. But now, the community did it for me. They exposed everything my family had tried to hide. Mountains of debt, investment fraud, fake charity funds. I didn't have to do anything. They destroyed themselves. I heard my mother had to sell the family's heirloom diamond ring, the one she always declared was the Gibson women's legacy, just to pay rent. And Hazel? She wandered through second-rate events, clinging to old connections no one cared about anymore. A photo of her drunk, mascara running down her face, yelling at staff at a small event in Brooklyn went viral. The most popular caption? From Instagram queen to failure princess. Someone messaged me asking how it felt to see them like that. I answered with just one short sentence. I feel nothing. And that was the truth. I didn't feel anything anymore. No satisfaction, no vindication, no pity. Lucas suggested I countersue them for the emotional and financial damages they had caused me over the years. I just shook my head. No need. They're already facing the consequences. I had chosen my path, a path with no traces of them. I didn't need to go back to pick up the broken pieces they had left behind. The day the Sarah Gibson Foundation reached its milestone of funding its first 100 free heart surgeries, I hosted a small party. No prestigious guests, just the people from Reclaim, those who had dared to step out of the massive shadows of their families. We raised glasses of juice, no alcohol, no fake elegance, and laughed. "We live for ourselves now," said a woman in her 50s, her eyes glowing with pure joy. I smiled, nodding, and that is something they'll never have. They had once labeled me everything, the perfect daughter, the model sister, the obedient heir, and finally, the backup daughter. I had lived my whole life under those names, like a heavy coat forcing me to bow my head. Now, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I no longer recognized any trace of that girl. My hair was shorter, my smile lighter, and my eyes no longer searched for approval from those who never truly saw me as family. The day I officially changed my legal name, erasing the Gibson name entirely, keeping only Nora Sarah, I stood in front of the San Diego County Court, paperwork in hand, and Lucas asked if I was sure. "More sure than ever," I said. "I'm no longer the Gibson heir. I don't need to be anything other than myself." My hand signing the papers didn't shake. I walked out of the courthouse with a freedom in my steps I had never known after years of being dragged down by invisible chains. I rented a small studio near the beach. On weekends, I drove myself to the mobile clinics funded by the Sarah Foundation, helping provide free screenings for low-income families. I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't a spokesperson. I was just someone sitting next to them, listening to their stories about chest pains they had been afraid of, doubts they had never dared face. I taught them how to ask questions, how to demand their rights, how not to stay silent. And every time I left, I felt a little more healed. I no longer kept photos of the Gibson family, nor did I keep gifts from Emily or my mother. I returned everything that had ever symbolized control, obligation, or emotional debt. I didn't need them anymore. Now, the things I kept were photos with the Reclaim group, notebooks full of scribbles from our meetings, thank you cards from families whose lives were saved thanks to the screening program. And a ring, Aunt Sarah's ring, the one Lucas helped me buy back from a stranger. I wore it as a quiet reminder that I was her daughter, and my own. On my 37th birthday, I didn't throw a party. I only invited a few new friends, the old support group and Camila, the one who had been by my side from the very beginning. We had dinner outdoors under warm golden string lights. No toasts, no speeches, no flowery words. Just soft laughter, gentle shoulder touches, everyday stories from people learning how to live for themselves. I stood on the balcony, letting the California breeze run through my hair and the morning light dry out the old dark corners inside me. The sea in the distance still roared like the slow, steady breath of someone who had finally learned to live for themselves. I didn't look back. I didn't need to close any doors. The past closed itself, quietly, like the things I had chosen to leave behind. Sarah's ring rested in my hand, no longer a symbol of pain, just a beautiful pause in the life story I would now write for myself. Nora's story is not just a journey of breaking free from a toxic family. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the bravest act isn't fighting others, but letting go of the things that once imprisoned us, in silence. In real life, some ties that seem like blood can actually be invisible chains. Choosing to step out, live by our own values, and build our own happiness isn't selfish. It's the deepest form of self-love, and sometimes that's what real freedom looks like. What do you think about Nora's journey? Have you ever faced toxic relationships like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional family stories like this one.